Welcome to Growing Your Firm, brought to you by Jetpack Workflow. We're here to help firms unlock the secrets to help you reach your goals faster. And now, here's your host, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow, David Cristello.
Hey everybody, Dave Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Nicole Durio, CPA. She's the managing principal at Madison Brothers Consulting Group. You know, one of the interesting things, although we're probably going to talk about many different interesting aspects of Nicole and her firm, when we were gearing up for today's interview, she had mentioned something to me about how she structures joint ventures, which I hadn't heard about before at all. We've talked about JVs a couple times on the show. Nicole has just such a different take on it, so really excited to dig into that. And then other thing she mentioned was how she can scale up her team of 5 FTEs, and if needed, depending on the client or the project she's taking on, could scale up to 50 people, scale back down. So really exciting structure. We're going to dig into that and so much more. But first of all, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for folks not familiar with Madison Brothers, before we dig into the JVs and how you think about team and scaling up and scaling down, help us understand, what does Madison Brothers service line look like, and what's a typical client for you?
Sure. So, David, I will put it into two tranches, if you will. So we have our CFO / fractional controller services, where we offer part-time advisory services, anything that would be germane to a CEO or the C-suite or private equity investor or owner in a business. Then we also work with high net worth individuals who 90% of the time have franchise concepts, like Massage Heights, Meineke Auto Care Center, Massage Envy, A Hand in Stone, Tropical Smoothie King. And with those individuals, we just typically say, David, it's pretty simple. We do anything concerning a dollar, how to categorize it, monetize it, how to invest it, spend it, save it, depreciate it, tax it, save it, and turn it over.
I love this niche, because we've talked about high net worth individuals, but it's usually like, well, they have to be worth at least X amount. But I don't know if it was organic or by design, but this concept of, it seems like you're focused on folks that have like you said, franchise concept. Was that organic or was that intentional as you got into that service?
No, actually, it was organic. In 2012, I bought a tax practice from another CPA who the IRS chose not to renew her EFIN number, which is her electronic filing identification number, because she actually got behind on her payroll taxes. So we went in and did a fire sale, and we acquired her clients for basically pennies on the dollar. And we did a revenue share with her even at that point. And some of those clients they owned small businesses, but they just gravitated to franchise concepts. And so once you're kind of in that space, all the owner operators, they talk, your name gets kind of thrown in the hat. And then actually about a month ago, we got a call from one of my seasoned clients, and they said that the president of Massage Heights asked if they could publish our information in their newsletter as a go-to resource for their operators. And we're there with Meineke as well. And so it was a niche. Yeah, it was the niche market that just really gravitated and grew from pure execution and depth of relationship.
I love the niche so much. And that's just such a great example that when you create so much value for such a specific group, all of a sudden these acquisition opportunities come up, because then you're like, oh my gosh, so many people are working with Nicole. Like, why aren't we putting this information in our newsletter? Why, a conference, customer summit, I don't know, whatever things they're doing in their community.
Absolutely. What's unique about a franchise business that a lot of people don't understand is they're kind of an often overlooked market, because some of the regional or mid-tier firms would consider them to be too small. But what happens is once someone becomes a franchise owner operator, the goal is to have multiple stores and then from multiple stores, multiple concepts, right? So we have franchises that are in the restaurant business and the service business.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Well, I mean, that's the kind of insights you get when you start getting exposure to that market. Now, you got entry into this market by purchasing a practice in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd fallen behind on their payments,
Payroll,
uh,
yes, for
payroll
her.
taxes. This seems like a pivotal moment in, developing your exposure in this niche. How did you even was this somebody you knew, or how did you even come across this opportunity to buy it in the first place?
Actually, it was probably 3 or 4 degrees of separation. Someone that knew me knew someone that knew someone, literally that knew someone, right? That's how it was, literally 4 degrees of separation. And they connected me to the third middleman who had a direct connection with this lady who had lost her ability to process tax returns. And so they reached out to me. And actually, I was working in a W-2 role at the time, because sometimes you take on projects that are long lasting. They don't want to pay you 1099, they want to pay you as a W-2. So I was drinking from a water hose for about 4 months. It was painful. So painfully that my daughter at the time was 7. I taught her how to do data entry on tax returns. So my dad helped me and my daughter, and I went through about 6 office managers. I mean, it was a nightmare. Ultimately ended up closing that practice down, but I held on to about 10 or 12 pivotal relationships. And man, I mean, that purchase, that fire hose, has paid me in ways I would have never even imagined. Now it's gotten me into the construction space and the governmental space, and it's just amazing. And now I have clients in the insurance space. We work with people in over 22 states. I mean, it's just been phenomenal. And it literally came from one decision that I made, which was seeing an opportunity and seizing it.
Now, when it got put on your desk, was it this firm's going up for sale, or hey, I usually work with this firm, but I can't get my tax return done with them. Can you help?
No, it was literally, tax season starts in 3 weeks. I have 300 clients, and I did not have time to tell them no. Can you come in and save the day? So it was really kind of like a white knight deal where you just kind of came in so she can at least save face to have an opportunity to dismantle and wind down the practice. And so, I mean, it was put together on a shoestring, David. And like, I'm not going to tell you, it was not pretty, but we got it done.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what a pivotal moment for your firm. It sounds like there was a lot of short-term pain that was as a result of
Oh,
it.
yes, yes, but it paid tremendous dividends, because at the time, I think the firm was like maybe about 3 or 4 years old, and so we just had a couple part-time resources and myself, and then I was in a W-2 role, but, we just rolled up our sleeves, we paid a couple good bonuses, and we drunk from that water hose, and here we are almost going into year 15.
I love it. Well, fast forward to today, we talked a bit about joint ventures. So, help the audience understand what is an example of a successful joint venture for you and your firm? What's an engagement you would do, a JV, a partnership with? Help us
Mhm.
understand what that world looks like for you.
So, David, for me, what that looks like for us is partnering with a firm that does not have, or that has, a skill set or capability that we are lacking. So I'll give you an example. We have an alliance agreement right now with a marketing firm, and they do a lot of marketing primarily to dental offices and dental management groups. So they actually go out, seek out the clients, seek out the businesses, let them gather all of the data for us, and we execute the work, whether it's a tax project or a tax credit project or HR, whatever that work is, we do, and we have a revenue share arrangement.
Okay. Do you mind sharing what that revenue arrangement is, or am I going to get you in trouble?
No, 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 no. It's 60-40.
Okay.
We get 40 and they get 60%.
Okay.
And the reason we do it that way is because our relationship with them allows us to capitalize on more volume. And what I mean by that is volume that we would not get otherwise just by working on our own merit.
So they're bringing dental practices to you as accounting
Mhm.
clients. Is that correct?
Tax clients, yes.
tax clients.
Mhm.
And that 60/40, is that for in
The
perpetuity,
fees
that
are
year
paid.
one?
No, no, it's just as long as there's a project and fees are paid, that's the fee split.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Got it.
Mhm.
Now, how did you how do you think about these relationships? I think there's a lot of hesitation in the community about trusting folks to, have revenue share partnerships with. So I guess, how do you think about knowing who is the right person to kind of partner with?
Well, first of all, it starts with the access to information, right? So we have access to the information, to the agreements. We know what the pricing is with the end user or the end client. And so we trust individuals and partners until they give us a reason not to. So we don't ever go in thinking we're going to get screwed. Like
Trust by default.
you'll never win that way. You'll
Yeah.
never.
Trust by default.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the pie is so large, right? The loaf of bread is so big. There's no way any one person, one company, one entity could get it all, right? Because otherwise it would be a monopoly. And so you have to be open. We have another relationship with a regional firm, a regional minority firm. It's actually, I believe, it's a Pakistani firm group, and they outsource all of their transactional work to us, which is in the deal space, right? So that if their clients want to buy or sell a business, then they reach out to us. And that revenue share is 65/35. So they get 65%, we get 35%. But the reason that share is higher is because it's their name that's on the engagement letter. So they are more prone to get sued, if you will, if something blows up. It would be very difficult for the client to find us because we operate under their email addresses and their name.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you're really
Oh,
under
yeah,
their
I have about 12 or 15 email addresses. I actually have a little Rolodex of how I keep up with all of them.
Now, I might be stating the obvious, but is this the number one acquisition strategy for growth for your firm? All these partnerships?
No, no, no. It actually is not what we are actually at a pivotal point. And what I mean by that is pivotal point is we have to decide, do we want to continue these relationships because most of our agreements renew in September? Do we want to continue these relationships or do we want to bring sales and marketing in-house, right? So that we no longer have to do the revenue share, but then you run the risk of, okay, how do we compensate them or not? And so my board and I are in discussions about what that looks like. And since next year is going into year 15, I think we'll probably give it one more run, but then we'll start to transitioning to bringing sales and marketing and the development in-house.
Interesting. Yeah, huge shift. You'll have to come back on as you're making that shift. That'll be exciting.
Yes, it's exciting, but it's very definitely unnerving because when you know it's going to get done because you have a vested interest, it's kind of like I don't know. So it's going to
Pros
be
and
a tough
cons.
for me. Yeah, but I'm definitely on the fence. I'm open to both.
Yeah, interesting. Tough decision to be
Mhm,
sure. If you're open to it, if somebody's listening and you have a strong opinion, maybe you've done something similar to what Nicole's about to go through, let
mhm,
us know. Shoot a note our way. Always interested to hear stories from the trenches. You'd mentioned something when we talked pre-interview, having 5 FTEs, but then you could scale up to quite a lot. I mean, 10 times the resources if you need to. So
mhm.
how in the world do you even structure that where you can go from 5 to 1 day to 20 to 30, the next? So how does that work?
So, David, after doing this for almost 30 years, we understand the bandwidth, the manpower that is needed based on the undertaking. And so we have relationships with three staffing firms in the service space and the accounting and finance space. And so if we're in discussions, because a deal like that is just not going to come and you got to have those people in 48 hours. It's going to be continuous discussions back and
Yeah, it's
forth,
fair.
creation of a scope of work. And so then you reach out to your people. Hey, listen, I have this on the horizon. Send me resumes that look like this, or I know I want AB person on it, CD, and then you can backfill with the other 8 or 10 people. And then we just go from there. And we start conducting our interviews and kind of doing our research. We do background checks on everyone, and they are full background checks, lease history, mortgage history, credit, financial, criminal. just everything. Because when you're dealing with numbers and what's going on, you just be surprised. And I'll tell you, I was working on a construction deal and the client was already married to wanting to use a person out of Dallas. And they're like, oh, we don't need a background check. They were referred by so and so. It's like, no, 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 no. This is our policy. This is our process. Background check, they even came back 85 pages long. My attorney and I were like, what in the world has this guy been doing? And they were like, oh, yeah. So that process works. So yes, we do full background check. So we know
Now,
where you live, what kind of cars you buy, if you got a title, if you got a mortgage, if you leased it, if you paid it off, if you jumped a lease, if you tried to crisscross leases, oh, we get all that.
what are some other learnings as you've hired, various, short-term, midterm contractors from these staffing companies? What are some either processes you've developed or early mistakes that you've since corrected?
I think them understanding that just like we go under the umbrella of some of our clients, them going under the umbrella of their own. And again, of course, you always have people that say, hey, you can call me directly, right? So you get one or two of those, but we quickly learned and know how to weed those out. So what we started doing is bringing individuals in who may be an experience level below what we need, right? Because if you bring in someone too experienced or above, then they think that they can take your business or own the client relationship once their term is over with us. So we tend to be a little more conservative and get someone who's less experienced and put in more managerial support.
Now, what does the staffing company do? And then what have you developed as post their recommendation? Sounds like your intensive background check is something that you've added in addition
Oh, correct.
to
Mhm.
what they do. Are
Mhm.
there other things post the recommendations that you're doing, or are they testing for skills and
We typically do not test for skills. And the reason being, David, some people just know how to test well, right? So you can take a test and do well and not understand the concept. And then you have some people who work out really, really well, but they're not good test takers because they get anxiety with the fact of a test. So that was something, I mean, we did that very early on, like maybe a year 4 or 5, that we realized that was not a good indicator.
so what happens after is the entire process, staffing company goes out, vets them. If they say, hey, this person looks great, you run intensive background screening, and then are they hired or are there other steps between that?
So no, so the staffing company already has this bench strap. So they have thousands of resumes, like thousands of resumes all over the country. So we send them a profile of what we're looking for, and they'll send us, if we need 10 people, we're going to get 20 resumes. And then we'll go through those resumes and narrow it down. And then we do situational interviews. It's like, give us an example of when you did XYZ, or how do you handle conflict? That's another thing we do, David, that's really different. When we're talking about partnering with people, people ask for referrals. We always ask people, give us at least 2 clients that you had disagreements with. We want to talk to them because we want to understand how the disagreement was resolved and what actions were taken and how it was identified, right? Because you can learn from mistakes and things that way. And when I tell people that, they're like, oh my God, I never even thought. Yes. Well, because everyone can send you the clients that gave you a 100, but I want to see those 50.
Yeah. And do you call the clients or is that kind of like a
Oh yeah, I do. And I give that potential partner their time, like, tell me the spin, tell me what happened. Because I built trust early on with my clients just by owning my mistakes, right? Like,
yeah.
hey, did you know what?
Yeah.
And it's like, we have what's called just fall on the sword, right? Just tell the truth. Hey, you know what? I missed it, working real late, whatever, whatever. This is how we can fix it. Let's pivot and move on.
So fall on the sword is something you mentioned you reference a little bit. Are there other attributes you reference or other phrases you reference a lot internally?
Yes. I always tell people, do your best, then take a step back and go do better. So I don't like for people to give me any work unless they've had a minimum of 3 looks at it, because you can cut your workload in half by doing it right the first time.
I love that. I love that concept. Thinking about what you'd mentioned on the background check and, operating for 15 years, I guess what have been some books, mentors, who's taught you the most about operating within a firm or being a business owner? Have there been specific books that have had a big impact or specific people?
Of course, hands down, John Maxwell, leadership guru, have many of his books. Paid $11,000 in 2016 to be mentored by him for 72 hours. And some people, and that's like really, really low. But I tell people, you have to be willing to invest in yourself and you have to do what others won't do so you can do what others can't do.
And what was it about John Maxwell that resonated or illuminated so much for you?
Just his leadership style, being a leadership guru, the way he thought through things, his process, it was just phenomenal. I was already into him, but I don't know how I got a random call from someone in Washington state of Washington with this opportunity. And I mean, at that time, my money flow, cash flow, it wasn't that great. I mean, people, you do not pay $11,000 for 3 days of training. Like that's just like,
Yeah.
that is not something that people do. It was not the norm, but I was like, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm just going to bite the bullet and move things around. And quite honestly, I had to take some money out of my retirement so that I could do it. But like, I can't even begin to put on paper or tell you how many dividends that investment has paid.
Yeah. Is there a, for something like that, 72-hour deep dive with somebody like John Maxwell, so very prolific. I don't know how many bestsellers he's had. A lot of content he puts out in the space. I guess was it the emotionality of seeing him lead? Like, so for example, sometimes you're watching, I don't know, an athlete, an artist, and just by kind of being in proximity to
Mhm.
somebody that operates at a higher level through some weird emotional osmosis, you feel it. You feel differently. You have just a different sense of what's possible. So was that kind of the main takeaway from John, or were there
No, it
specific
wasn't.
like tidbits that you can recall?
No, the takeaway for me, David, was being in proximity in the room, the ability to ask questions, but getting a pure view into his thought and decision making process.
Mm. What's an
Like
example of like a thought or decision making process that he would go through?
like one of the examples he gave us, it was 2016. He had gotten contacted by the Green Party, the Independent Party, about running for president. And he took us through that 2 week decision and things he thought about and what he did. But the ultimate factor, he said it took him about 2.5 weeks to make a decision. He brought all of his stakeholders together, like his family members, everything, talked to them, kind of fleshed it out. Then he went back and thought, but he said the ultimate deciding factor was for him was it would change too many people's lives in his circle, in his family forever. And he was not willing to risk that at the age he was. So basically, he said, given this opportunity, maybe at 40 or 50, it probably would look different. But asking me to do this at 70, I can't risk it. So just, I mean, and that session, that meeting lasted 4 hours. He took us through the entire process. And I just remember writing, I mean, I had like 40 pages of notes from 72 hours with him. It was just phenomenal and amazing. And just shared the leadership nuggets. One of the things that he says that I've adopted too is you have to observe an environment before you attempt to change it, right? So he said, as a leader, you can't come in and just start implementing your processes and your procedures, and you don't know anything about the environment, the people, how they got there. It can be very disruptive. And so if you're a disruptive leader, that can be very detrimental to the sustainability of a business or an organization. So it's almost like just coming in and letting the business show for you, and you sit in the back seat and you just ride around 30, 60, 90 days until you figure out exactly what's going on.
I love it. I love it. Well, here's to hoping that one day one of us gets a random call from a random part. Hey, are you busy? We'd love for you to run for president. What a crazy world that, get that phone
And
call. Hey, what are you doing for, I don't know, the next 5 years? We're gonna want you to campaign for a year. Maybe
yeah,
we have an outlier shot of maybe.
yeah, we got your money. We have a budget. Yeah, that was pretty phenomenal because that was when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were in the race. So, and they didn't like either option. So they said, "Hey, John, why don't you be number three?" But yeah, so pretty phenomenal. And just, I mean, timing is everything, right? So
Yep.
never will forget August 2016.
Yeah, that's amazing. That would definitely be at the top of like, hey, honey, got this really interesting phone call today. Somebody
Exactly.
wants me to run for
And
not
then
just somebody, but like a party with a budget. Yes, it's it's
oh,
number one
yeah,
domain too.
right. They got the wallet, the bankroll, like they're all ready.
Yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy. Well, Nicole, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. What is the best way for somebody to reach out, say thank you, learn more about your firm?
Sure, I would like anyone who's interested in having a conversation with me to visit madisonbrothers.com, Madison, brothers spelled out, Brothers. And if you want a 1 hour complimentary consultation, mention David's name. Never ever done this before, but only willing to do 5. And just so that you know, a 1 hour consultation with me is $995, but I'll give it to you the first 5. Mention David's name.
Fantastic. Go to madisonbrothers.com, blow up Nicole's calendar for me, name drop me. If you do that, drop a note to me. I would love to see the results come in and see how that conversation goes. I mean, I think it's pretty rare for a guest to say, hey, jump on my calendar. Happy to talk with anybody. So, for those interested, please take her up on it. I have no vested interest whether you talk with Nicole or not, but I think it's just an amazing offer to open up your calendar for our community. For folks that really enjoyed today's episode, you can get the show notes, the recap, the links at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you enjoyed today's interview, leave a 5-star review. It helps us get the word out. And if you really loved something from today, really illuminated a new bright spot for you and your firm, share it with a fellow firm owner that needed to hear it. I know it's the best way to thank Nicole for coming on, and it just warms our heart every time we see referrals come into the podcast community. Nicole, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Growing Your Firm, the podcast series for global, small, and medium-sized businesses ready to scale and increase profits. You can check out more podcasts by following the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. At Jetpack Workflow, we're all about maximizing returns for accounting firms and CPAs. Check out more podcasts on growing your firm and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.